Good morning, friends. Hey, so today I've been researching and looking at 1 Corinthians 13, the classic scripture on love, used in a lot of weddings and a lot of places. But in the midst of it, one of the things I've been doing the last few days has been looking up the meaning of words or etymology. And I'm doing this because when you're reading places like 1 Corinthians 13, or when you're looking at like the core of what Jesus said the most important of the commandments was to love God and love each other, that the key there is love. And so as I've been really studying and trying to figure out how best to talk about love outside of this sense of like the romantic comedies and the sense of I love tacos, right? What does love really mean? And so in 1 Corinthians 13, it's actually, if you really read it, and I've read it a bunch of times before it just sank in, there's kind of a little bit of a frightening spot there at the beginning. And by frightening, I mean very clear on how people should take, how serious we should take love, and specifically loving everybody. You may have heard this before, but just kind of let it sink in. If I speak in tongues of mortals and of angels, but don't have love, I'm a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith so as to remove mountains but do not have love, I am nothing. If I do not have love, I am nothing. When you go into 1 John 4, it's one of those great passages about that God is love. It says that if we say we love God and hate a brother or sister, then we are liars and we do not love. Well, that's kind of frightening. Then if you get into the separation of the sheep and the goats from Matthew, kind of this, the one that people think of as the judgment, right? Where the good people are set on one side and the bad people on the other, or the sheep and the goats, and they're separated, and what separates them is not what they believed, but what they did. This mentality of your actions share truly what you believe. And so getting into that kind of seriousness, love is very serious in Scripture because it is consistently and over put in this place of a requirement for our lives. And that is a true way that we'll see. Even songs have been written out about it. They'll know we are Christians by our love, And I think this is that part where you can, when we need to understand and we need to spend in this space of learning how to love and learning what love is. And Jesus really pushed the people. The book, in the book of Matthew, Jesus goes through in the Sermon on the Mount. A lot of us know the Beatitudes, which are intentionally pushing back against what it was in the community. Blessed are the poor. That's not most of the time. People think the rich are blessed. Blessed are the meek, saying they will inherit the earth. A lot of these are pushing back up against what it truly means, the difference between how society sees things and how God sees things. And as you read through salt and light, talking about shining the light of God or the light within, we don't put it underneath a lampstand. Talking about not even becoming angry with one another, getting this sense of peace and hope and grace and love. And it goes so far throughout this that it's not a matter of then we ignore the bad parts or the hard parts in life. Rather than Jesus then used that as a thing to say that especially at the end of Matthew, that this is how we'll know that love. By your willingness to help the least of these, not the least of these in God's eyes, but the least of these, those who have been hurt, those who have been put in prison, those who have no food, no home, no clothing. Jesus goes even further into saying the immigrant and the widow and the orphan, people who for the most part in most countries were ignored, and still to this day we have a lot of countrywide controversy of caring for people who we don't share language with or that we don't have a similar upbringing or cultural background. And I guess I'm coming all of this to kind of point out all of these things in one thing, that we are called to love. And so when we dig into what it means to be loved, 1 Corinthians 13 gives us this really interesting stretch of things to look at. And so, hold on. I have my notes too far away. I kind of separated this passage. So there's love is patient, kind, and unending. Those are three different things that love is. And then Paul also says, then love is not envious, boastful, rude, or irritable, or resentful. So it seems like some people might have been a little confused in Corinth about what love was. And then he says some of the things that love does and does not. That love rejoices in truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. And love does not insist on its own way, rejoice in wrongdoing. This Sunday I'm going to be preaching about love bearing all things, believing all things, hoping all things, and enduring all things. So if you're around, that'll be posted here. I'll have that sermon will be up on YouTube later too, if you can't make that live service at 9 a.m. But the thing that I stopped at today was patient, understanding patience. And so getting into what the word patience means is really interesting when you get into what the etymology or the study of the words is. And so the word for patience there in Corinthians is macrothumeo, which is a combination of two words. One is macro, which is a long time or a long distance, and then two, thumeo, or thuo, which is actually thumeo, which is a root of that is thuo, or thuo. Excuse me for those of you who know how to speak ancient Greek. I'm probably butchering those. But the primary verb there is two things. One, to rush, which means to like blow hard, or blow smoke, or breathe hard. And then it also is the same word that is used to sacrifice, to kill, and to slay. So when you kind of put these together, and I spent a lot of time digging in. So if love is patient, love is willing to spend a long time sacrificing, or to dwell within pain. Because another way to put that is a long time suffering indignation, fierceness, or wrath. That's kind of that is literally how those words come into play. So this idea of being patient, in the King James Version it says long suffering, or suffereth long. I feel that when you're reading the King James Version, you have to speak in that way. So if love is patient, love invites us to be in this space, being willing to suffer with others for a long time. And to me, that just had such a bigger impact than like, suck it up, buttercup, that mentality of like, oh, life stinks right now. Rather, it's a willingness or a perseverance. Love perseveres. Love is willing to stand up in the midst of breathing hard and blowhardness and fake, to sacrifice, to and the kill and slay. Those were around more the sacrificial words. So those were the holy words for like sacrificing something that you have for God or for redemption. And so it has an actual holier meaning than just like to go hunting or to end something's life. So if love is patient, then love has this understanding, or invites us to have this understanding of there is going to be difficulty, and it's not going to be over quick. And I kind of thought about this as I looked at it, and I went, in our current state, that there's this sense of God's will is not done immediately, but neither is anything. And I was reading some of the Proverbs this morning, and also got pulled into this passage in, I want to say it was like Proverbs 13, maybe 14. that talked about wealth is built in small, or, well, achievement or success is built in small pieces rather than trying to get everything all at once. And I thought that's a great thing for patience. And because I began to think of it in terms of like weightlifting or wisdom or degrees or becoming an expert in something, that it doesn't just happen overnight, even though just like patience, that's been a prayer of mine. Lord, just give me all the patience in the world right now. It happens over time. And if you try and go too fast or do too much, you can actually hurt yourself. Which then even patience begins to invite us into this space of taking care of ourselves. Because if it's not going to happen right this moment, if it's going to take a while, and doing that is going to cause pain, then stepping back is really important. And I've been weightlifting now for about, I don't know, gosh, I'm 30, so 15 years. And one of the things that I've really only truly began to accept has been in the last few years, and this is the concept of a deload week or a rest week. And in that, in weightlifting, the deload week is a week where in the midst of heavy weightlifting, you would take an entire week or sometimes a week and a half to 2 weeks to lift less weight. Like you don't go even half of what you're capable of. And you don't just bump up your repetition so that you do the same total number of pounds lifted. You literally do less. And then there's also a lot of people that say that you don't even need a deload week. You just need to take an entire week off. And the amazing thing about this is that the most increase of strength happens the week after, or being able to measure the most increase of strength, most of the time happens the week after a deload week or the week after a rest week. And the research behind that has said that it's not actually the muscles, but it's the neurological system, that it's our neurons need to be renewed, that the stress on the system is holistic. So getting that energy out and doing that kind of stuff. So I thought about all that together in this sense of love is patient. So love understands that there is a lot of pain and suffering that we may go through, the sorrow and brokenness, but to do so with one another is a glorious thing. And in the midst of that, too, love understands that because it will take a while, we need to rest. And those are the best days, coming back from a rest, to see great growth. And I think about this in terms of dealing with anxiety and frustration, dealing with stress, that we need some time away from those things. And God put those in there, right? This is the Sabbath. But also, one of the things we've completely ignored in Christianity since is the Jubilee, where every 7 years there was an extended period of renewal. There was a removal and a forgiveness of loans. One of the reasons why the Jewish people did not do loans very often is because every 7 years they'd be completely forgiven. And then there was a greater Jubilee every 49 years. So basically, once in your life, you would experience this great sense of renewal and refreshment and coming back into this space of everything starts at that same level again. And in some professions, in ministry, in collegiate professorship, there's this sense of a sabbatical. Jesus showed us how to do this by going off by himself to pray and spending time alone, even in the midst of his long 3 years of public ministry. And so I guess as we're going into this, understanding that God and love is patient and kind, be patient with yourself. Be patient with others. And rest in who God is. Because sometimes if you just want to grow, or you just want to find that next thing, or you want to reach that next achievement, or find that sense of the right way to act right now, sometimes you need to take a step back and be renewed. And honestly, most of the time we need it much more than we realize. And that's why God commanded it, but commanded the Sabbath. So my hope for you today is that you find a few moments to be patient with yourself, that maybe you plan for that time of renewal, maybe you begin to wonder and dream of how you might spend that time being patient with yourself, and be blessing to yourself and to others. May God go with you today.